Hello, I'm Jody Wolf. You're watching EXPOZ. Today, October 10, 2010 in Birmingham, Alabama at 9 p.m. I have an interesting topic, and we want to go back and show you the start of communism in this not only country but in the world as we know it under that name. What you probably didn't know was it started over 4,000 years ago. Do you remember in Genesis chapter 41, the Pharaoh had a dream? This is just one of many that Joseph interpreted for him, but this particular dream was the land of Egypt, the Pharaoh's land, which was at that time was the largest empire on earth. They were going to have 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. When Joseph interpreted that dream, Joseph became the number 2 man in all the kingdom under the Pharaoh. That's like Joseph today being in Air Force 2 behind Air Force 1. But what he did after he told the Pharaoh of the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, Pharaoh said, then you handle it. You take care of it. You make sure that we're okay during the 7 years of famine. So Joseph did that. He took a measure from everyone and put the grain, the seed, away so that they could have bread in their homes and feed the cattle and the goats and the sheep and so forth during this time. So 7 years of plenty, 7 years of gathering, and then indeed the 7 years of famine came upon the land. Now, first, during the famine, the people, Jews and Gentiles, were coming to Joseph buying grain to get by these tough economic times. And other lands came as well, so this was putting a strain on what was put up. So the price went up. So after the people ran out of money, then they started giving part of their cattle for grain so that they could have bread in their kitchen and so that they could have food for their cattle that they had left that they didn't give the Pharaoh. Well, they ran out of that. They had to give the remaining cattle that they owned for more grain just to eat on. Well, that grain ran out. So then they sold their land or traded for grain, for bread, for their kitchen. That ran out. So then they gave their homes for grain, for food. That ran out. So then they gave themselves. They are now slaves to the Pharaoh. So that is the first note in human history where there were slaves, and that's when it started. Now let's fast forward to early 1900s. Lenin, Russian president or leader, he said, "My promise to you, every home will have bread in the kitchen." Those were the words he used. Those were the very words that launched the communist revolution. My promise to you, every home will have bread in the kitchen. So now they have communism. It didn't take place overnight. It took place over time. But it doesn't take much time. If you look at back when Joseph worked for the Pharaoh, handled his problems or his business, I guess you can call it, for him, it took only 7 years. Well, in Lenin's time, it probably didn't take that long because he was a dictator. So Lenin launched the communist revolutions by promising food for the kitchen and in the bellies of every family and of every person. So I'm going to cut it off here and Start of Communism Part 1, and then we'll move on to Start of Communism Part 2, and you're going to be in for a really big surprise. You're not going to be happy with what you hear, but you are going to hear a reality, something that's really about to take place. Jody Wolf, EXPOZ.